Good afternoon, Vivian. To the United Kingdom. Primary speakers are Honourable Lorna G. Smith, Deputy Premier and Minister for Financial Services, Labour and Trade, and Honourable Dr. Natalio Wheatley, Premier and Minister for Finance for the Government of the Virgin Islands. They both will share details on this very important event. We have a full agenda today, and I recognize that our last press conference was very specific. To that end, I want to ensure an efficient and productive session today and encourage all media representatives to ask the necessary questions. Each media house will be allotted up to 4 questions. Yes, excluding your 1 follow-up questions. For this structure to work smoothly, we are asking you all to adhere to those rules, as I will be very firm with the rules. Before we proceed, I would like to acknowledge the presence of several distinguished guests today. Junior Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries, the Honourable Dr. Carl Dawson, Permanent Secretaries, Mrs. Carolyn Stout-Igwe, Dr. Ronald Smith-Berkeley, Mr. Joseph Smith-Abbott, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Dr. Laverne Chalwell-Bruley. Additionally, I recognize Ms. Ayana Glasgow, Executive Director of International Business Regulations at the Ministry of Financial Services, Labour and Trade. To ensure maximum accessibility, this press conference is broadcast live on ZBVI Radio, CBN Radio, Flow TV, Channel 100, and CCT Live, Channel 291. I also would like to take a moment to extend my gratitude to the hard-working team of the Facilities Department. Your ongoing support and dedication in transforming this space at a moment's notice is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I hope you're hearing me. I now invite Honourable Lorna G. Smith, followed by the Premier, to bring the remarks. Are we going to switch it around today? We're going to switch it around, and I'll have the Premier to give his remarks first. Premier?
Thank you, Mrs. Christopher, and good afternoon to everyone present, and good afternoon to the people of the Virgin Islands. I'm pleased to be joined by Deputy Premier, Honourable Lorna Smith, OBE, to provide an update on our visit to the United Kingdom last week. Also present are the Deputy Premier's Executive Director of International Business, Ms. Ayana Glasgow, who accompanied us to London. We're also joined by the Acting Director of the BVI London office, Ms. Tracy Bradshaw, and my Chief Advisor, Mr. Kedrick Malone. I'll now update you on our various political engagements and activities, including our meeting with the new United Kingdom Minister for the Overseas Territories, Honourable Stephen Doughty. The Deputy Premier will thereafter provide an update on the financial services meetings attended. First, however, permit me to provide a bit of context. As you are aware, the UK held a general election on the 4th of July. The Labour Party won in a landslide victory after 14 years of Conservative Party rule. There's a new UK government led by Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Keir Starmer, and the political composition of the UK Parliament has considerably changed, heavily favouring Labour. There are many new members of Parliament, as well as new committee and subcommittee chairs. This dramatic shift in British politics and the appointment of a new Foreign Secretary, the Right Honourable David Lammy, a new Minister for the Overseas Territories, prompted me to lead a delegation to London to directly engage the new OT Minister and UK parliamentarians to ensure they are aware of our interests, needs, and desire for a new modern partnership between the UK and the Virgin Islands based on consultation, democracy, sustainable development, climate resilience, and self-determination. In terms of activities at the UK Parliament, we attended a reception hosted by the Speaker of the House of Commons, the Right Honourable Lindsay Hoyle, on the occasion of my visit to London. My delegation had the opportunity to meet many of the new members of Parliament and appointed members of the House of Lords, as well as longtime friends of the BVI, and several British academics and business people. Our leader of the opposition, Honourable Ronnie Skelton, and Honourable Marlon Penn were also present at the event. In my keynote speech to the attendees, I shared with them the negative effects of climate change on the Virgin Islands, and also updated on our recovery after Tropical Storm Ernesto and the two other extreme weather events we experienced prior to that. I also called for UK support for climate change mitigation adaptation to help the Virgin Islands build its climate resilience. I emphasized that such a partnership could serve as a model of how countries that are among the major CO2 emitters can assist small island developing states that are on the front lines of the climate crisis. Of course, I expressed our gratitude for the recent support of HMS Trent that remains on standby in the Caribbean to assist in the event of a hurricane or further extreme weather. In terms of the world economy, I gave assurances that the Virgin Islands does not tolerate any form of economic crime and will continue to be a strong partner of the UK and other jurisdictions in the fight against illicit finance and the application of economic sanctions. On governance, I highlighted the Virgin Islands' staunch commitment to good governance and our undertaking of the most comprehensive governance reform in the history of the territory that has considerably strengthened our governance framework and will help to improve our institutions and systems of government. Finally, I emphasized the importance of turning the page on the UK Virgin Islands' recent difficulties and looking ahead toward a new modern partnership in which we work together as partners to tackle the pressing challenges of today and to take advantage of the opportunities to build resilience and prosperity. Separately, I had the privilege of meeting select parliamentarians with whom we discussed these matters in great detail. They included Adam Jogi, MP and Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for the Commonwealth, Baroness Vere, who is the Shadow Parliamentary Secretary to the Treasury, and Baroness Brown, who is the Chair of Climate Change Adaptation Subcommittee. Given the importance of climate change, we also met with UK officials from various government departments, as well as private sector experts on solutions to accessing climate finance. We also met with senior executives of various news organizations, sharing pertinent information about the Virgin Islands. The engagement was very good. In terms of bilateral relations, I had the privilege of meeting Minister Doughty, who is no stranger to me. We previously met in his former role as Shadow Minister for the Overseas Territories. He has visited the Virgin Islands and is a friend of the Overseas Territories. I, of course, thank the Minister for the opportunity to meet. We discussed the threat of climate change and the need for UK support to assist the Virgin Islands with adaptation and mitigation, including through their contributions to the United Nations. He confirmed that the issue will be placed on the agenda on the annual Joint Ministerial Council slated for November. In terms of follow-up on the COI, I updated the Minister on the good work and dedication of everyone involved to get us to the end point of the process. I confirmed that there is one governance reform left to be implemented that the House of Assembly will complete upon my return. The Minister is looking forward to receiving an update when that is done. He also looks forward to the various bills that the House of Assembly has passed, going through their final checks and receiving assent by the Governor. I raised the question of lifting the order in Council, which the UK has tied to implementing the governance reforms. However, the Minister wishes to visit the Virgin Islands, as was done by the previous 3 OT ministers, so that he can make his own assessment and recommendation. The earliest his schedule will permit travel to the territory is November. The Governor and Deputy Premier were both present for the meeting, as well as my Chief Advisor, Mr. Kedrick Malone, as well as Ms. Ayana Glasgow. In terms of follow-up, I will officially write to the Minister to request that the order in Council is lifted once the House of Assembly passes the last governance reform bill. I will encourage the UK to keep to its word as we strive to build a new modern partnership between the UK and Virgin Islands on the basis of consultation, democracy, sustainable development, climate resilience, and self-determination. With that, I will close and turn over to the Deputy Premier, Honourable Lorna Smith, OBE.
Thank you, Premier. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As the Premier has said, the purpose of the mission to London was to meet members of the new Labour-led Parliament and the government. Given the importance of climate change to this territory, we took the opportunity to meet climate change and climate finance experts, officials in key government departments, and the private financial services sector. I am pleased to now make a few comments about the value of the visit in relation to our financial services industry. Firstly, the visit was an excellent opportunity to update our London-based financial services sector on how our National Action Plan implementation, which followed publication of the CFATF Mutual Evaluation Report, was going. I was absolutely delighted to see at least 30 members of our London Circle attending the briefing to ensure they are aware of the degree to which we are strengthening our regulatory and legislative financial services regimes to remain best in class, and our continued commitment to adhere to global standards. I am pleased to say that during the visit we were also able to brief officials in both Her Majesty's Treasury and the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. We were especially happy that the Treasury team was led by Director of Financial Services, Mr. Richard Knox. Officials welcomed our progress on the National Action Plan and in relation to publicly accessible registers of beneficial ownership. We remain grateful for their support on these matters, and in terms of the latter, we are now moving forward with our consultation, particularly around the definition of legitimate interest. As the Premier has said, the issue of climate change was a primary focus for the visit, with the delegation meeting key UK government officials, as well as Baroness Brown, Chair of the Climate Change Adaptation Subcommittee. Given that the Virgin Islands is currently unable to access funds emanating from the UN Climate Change Convention and the Paris Agreement, we know that private sector climate finance will be an important element in helping the Virgin Islands build resilience and develop adaptation measures to help mitigate the impact of climate change. This entire territory is experiencing the cost of adapting to climate change, especially in the high cost of insurance premiums. I am pleased to say that we had an excellent roundtable with key members of the Blue Capital private sector, which included senior representatives of the Howden Group, one of the largest insurers in the world. We agreed that investability and insurability will be key to attracting significant private investment into the Virgin Islands. I am determined to continue our discussions with these experts to assess how we can best utilize their support. Importantly, we will also be looking at how we can best incorporate our financial services expertise into this effort. I was therefore very pleased that Peter Tarn, formerly of Harney's, was able to join that particular meeting. Given our situation, and during our meeting with the Department for Climate Change and Net Zero, FCDO officials confirmed, as the Premier stated, that climate change will form a major part of the agenda for the Joint Ministerial Council. In addition, today it was reported that the Foreign Secretary, the Right Honourable David Lammy MP, will appoint a special envoy for nature for the first time in the United Kingdom. As you can imagine, we will be writing to ensure that the overseas territories, including the Virgin Islands, are top of that individual's agenda. There is a lot to do as we move forwards. I am confident that the links we have made will enable us to progress in these key areas, and I look forward to working closely with many of the experts with whom we connected. Thank you.
I want to say thank you to Honourable Premier, Dr. Natalio Wheatley, and of course, Deputy Premier, Honourable Lorna G. Smith, OBE. As stated before, we want to have a very seamless press conference today. Yes, we have increased the number to 4 because we understand that this is a big topic, and we do understand also that our last press conference was confined to a specific space. So to be fair, we wanted to ensure that the media is able to ask. Also keep in mind, media, that it is an ongoing House of Assembly today. So we want to ensure that we really not quicken your step, but seamlessly move forward and ask direct questions. So I'll invite the media to go ahead and start. And of course, give us your name and the media house to which you represent.
Everyone's so familiar with it in the mornings. Kathy Richards, JTV. Both Premier and Honourable Lorna Smith, can you say that we've had any tangible outcome from these meetings? Deliverables, tangible deliverables.
Well, firstly, it's very important that when a new administration comes to office, that you meet with them and you engage with them. We should be aware of the fact that good negotiation was done with the prior administration on areas like beneficial ownership that can have a truly detrimental impact on our economy. And in the House of Assembly earlier, I commended the Deputy Premier for her leadership on the issue, because as you would know, that in December 2023 was the deadline for us to have registers of beneficial ownership completely public. Okay? We all know, of course, that the Labour government has strong views on that particular area. So it's very important for us to meet with them and to ensure continuity of approach. I'm sure the Deputy Premier would want to comment on that further. But that is a huge success and a huge victory. Also, meeting new parliamentarians and being able to sensitize them to some of the issues as it pertains to the Virgin Islands. There's a lot of misinformation being spread on the Virgin Islands, and it can be very dangerous, especially when you get members of Parliament and they have the opportunity to make legislation. They have the opportunity to vote on legislation that could be detrimental to our interests. So it's always very important for us to ensure that we tell our side of the story and that we win as much support as possible. And those things should not be downplayed. Those things are extremely important. And of course, we had the opportunity to be able to speak directly to Minister Doughty. We have a fundamental responsibility to ensure that we keep him properly informed about our progress. because, of course, nobody can represent our progress like we can. And, of course, as you know, if he's not properly informed about our progress, that also can have detrimental consequences for us. So while persons would want to, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by tangible and deliverables. I would say that the meeting was important in protecting and promoting the interests of the Virgin Islands.
I would add, Kathy, that we accomplished what we went to accomplish, the three things, which was to meet the new Labour administration, as the Premier said, in addition to the formal meetings that he mentioned. At the reception that the Speaker hosted, this was in the middle of the day. For 2 hours, there were at least 20 new MPs in attendance. So meeting those people was invaluable. Forming a relationship with the new administration was very, very important. We were able to brief the new administration, both at the government level and at the political and the administrative level, about where matters stood in relation to issues in relation to our financial services. Meeting the likes of Richard Knox, who is the Director of Financial Services at the Treasury, was also invaluable, together with his team. They pledged their support as we move forward with the Financial Action Task Force and our National Action Plan. So it was a very important things for us. And the final point, let's not underestimate the importance of climate change. Mm-hmm. We are on the front line of climate change, as everybody in this room knows. We're in September. We know what we experienced in 2017. As I said this morning in the House, we have not even reached H. So we don't know what else is ahead of us. Mm-hmm. Talking with persons in the private sector about investing in climate change, in helping to build resilience, and being able to discuss with them the whole issue of insurability and the high costs of insurance that keeps coming up, not just in the House. We know that in the United Kingdom, companies or sector in the world, certainly, I would call it priceless. And we intend to follow up and to keep going in terms of all of the activities that we were able, and the persons that we were able to meet with.
Okay, Premier, this question is directly to you. At the last press conference that we would have had with yourself along with the governor, I think this entire territory, as well as we did, had the understanding that this mission to the UK was basically to discuss where we're at as it relates to the implementation of the Commission of Inquiry reforms. We did see information saying, yes, the deputy is going to be along with you. Today we are hearing that this team was much bigger, and from what you would have said, indicates to us that this was not the primary reason for this trip.
Well, the primary reason was to meet the new government, but a major part of meeting the new government obviously was updated on progress on the COI. But of course, you make an important trip like that to London, you want to make sure that you cover all your key priorities. The Deputy Premier already emphasized how much of a big challenge climate change is to us, and the support that we need from the United Kingdom. You know, we wouldn't have done the territory proper service if we did not mention the vulnerabilities that we experience and the need for support from the United Kingdom. As well as, of course, we know the issue of financial services, the importance of it to our economy. So no, we wouldn't travel to the United Kingdom and only speak about the COI. And certainly whenever we're in the United Kingdom, we seek to update the industry who is there. We engage with key stakeholders. You can't travel all the way to the United Kingdom and just have that singular focus. But of course, that was a major part of our visit.
Not just the COI, but also the lifting of the Ordering Council. Was this something that was specific when you would have sat with the OT minister, I guess, in the company of the governor and as well as your deputy?
Yeah, I made it very clear from the very beginning. We would like to see the Ordering Council lifted. It's something that whenever I have the opportunity to do it, I raise it. And we welcome the Minister of the Overseas Territories, Minister Doughty, coming to the territory to be able to assess progress for himself. He made it very clear it's, the governance of the territory and our reform process is something very important to him. And of course, he wants to be able to assess for himself progress. We welcome that. We have a good story to tell. And in the House of Assembly today, of course, we have a few financial services bills that we've been dealing with, but thereafter we'll go straight into statutory board reform, which represents the last remaining reform for us. And then we would have completed what we set out to complete as it pertains to the recommendations of Sir Gary Hickenbottom. And that's something for us to celebrate.
Madam Moderator, I will forego one of my questions for the follow-up on this one.
I just wanted to add 2 points to what the Premier said. I mean, COI certainly isn't my specific area, but I was very much present during the discussions, and the Premier did provide the update in terms of where we are in relation to the COI. 2 things I would like to say in terms of the Ordering Council. I see it as a process. It's not something that's going to be, we have to really look at what the process entails. But more importantly, in terms of the areas that are to be completed, all of us believe in the democratic process. It takes a while for bills to be completed. As the Premier said, we are going back into the House to finish, 5?
Yeah.
5 bills that are related to the Commission of Inquiry. And while I can't speak for my colleagues, especially on the other side, democracy, the democratic process isn't something that you can rush. If it takes them a few days longer than anticipated, we have to take those days or however long it takes to finish the process, to finish the particular bill. And so, we are expecting that by the end of the month, we're hoping that we would be finished. But who knows? It might be longer, it might be shorter. But I just wanted to make the point that democracy isn't something that you should rush.
Understood.
And let's not lose sight of that.
Understood, Deputy Premier, but the expectation, I'm not so certain that our communication strategy was good enough in terms of the expectations of people. When the steam left these Virgin Islands and went to the UK, for the masses, they were all waiting to hear, did the OT minister say, okay, yes, I'm satisfied that you're 98%, and so within this period, after assessing this, we can look at removing this Ordering Council. I think the expectation, because what you would have gathered while you were there was like, oh, they didn't get through. Oh, you're going to be surprised they got through. The expectation. So I am really trying to pull from you if you think that you would have communicated, which is very key to this territory, that this was more of a wider meeting than to go, because you were with the governor when it was announced that, okay, we are going, and this is something that you guys are doing together. But now we're here and hearing of a whole long list of other things with not that specific emphasis on this particular thing, which has the territory on edge.
Well, certainly, if we didn't properly communicate to the public that we would be dealing with other things, I can take responsibility for that. But of course, the COI, and I'll repeat that again, was a major part of our updates and our discussions with the minister. Minister made it very clear that was major part of our discussions, and we were very clear that we wanted to go and to give the proper updates. And I would just say to the public, don't be discouraged, because as the Deputy Premier said, this is a process. It is a process, and the minister has to go through his process. And a part of the minister's process is coming to the territory and to speaking with our senior civil servants and other stakeholders, meeting with the members of the House of Assembly. All of those things the minister wants to be able to do while he comes to his particular decision. And I'll take you back to former OT Minister, Minister Goldsmith. He made a very clear connection between lifting the order in council and completing the reforms. So we have one more reform to complete as it pertains to Sir Gary Hickenbottom's recommendations. And so when the minister comes here in November, we believe that we would be in position to advocate very strongly for the lifting of the order.
My final question, as allotted, is for you, Deputy. Which one to choose? Okay, I'll go with this. Premier, one of the other burning things for the territory is the access to financing to deal with the infrastructure of this territory. And we know that there was that avenue that was looked at before in getting a loan guarantee from the United Kingdom. And we are still at the stage where we would not have secured any other entity, as far as I know, for which we can get these maximum monies from. Has that conversation restarted while you were out there as to whether or not we can have some form of that loan guarantee?
Well, just so persons know, right now on the order paper in the House of Assembly, we have a $100 million loan facility that would assist greatly in restoring and repairing the infrastructure of the territory, which we know has been in pretty bad condition since 2017, when we had those two major hurricanes and the flooding events and the constant climate hazards that we face now, including increased flooding, increased frequency of storms, etc. We believe that facility will go a long way in helping to improve our infrastructure, which we believe is below the standards that everyone expects.
Okay, and my follow-up to that.
As it pertains to the loan guarantee, we were informed not long after I took office as the premier that the loan guarantee had expired. Okay, it had a finite period of time that it was being offered for, and it was expired. But it doesn't mean that we cannot continue to advocate for, I would say, climate finance, which is a big part of what we went to meet the government about, getting access to concessional finance, which we've been denied because of our status as overseas territories, as well as the OECD rules as it pertains to ODA, which stands for Overseas Direct Assistance. So we continue to advocate that because of our vulnerability, that we have to have a different means of assessing access to concessional finance. And some very good news that we did learn on this trip was that there's a think tank, I think DFI Institute, something like that, that they were putting forward a proposal to have overseas territories acknowledged in the annex to the UN Framework Convention for Climate Change, which would allow us access to climate finance like other independent countries.
Okay, and my follow-up. Is that entity that you're looking to have the loan from the Social Security Board? If not, which?
CIBC is the institution that will be going to the House of Assembly and seeking approval for $100 million loan facility.
Okay, I hope I have a second round.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kathy. I would like to pause a minute to recognize the presence of Honorable Vincent Wheatley, Minister for Health and Social Development. Honorable Wheatley, please take your proper seat. Thank you, sir. And now we have our next media host. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Cindy Rosenguava, Berry Media. Where was the opposition leader, and why was he not invited to, why was he invited to travel, if not to sit in the meeting with the OT minister? And what did you really accomplish, having just taken 30 minutes to speak with the OT minister?
The opposition leader had a CPA event that he was attending in the UK at the same time. So that's the reason why he was in the meeting. But of course, as you stated, we had about 45 minutes in the meeting. And that was just enough time for us to be able to put forward our case in terms of the progress that we've made. So we did that on behalf of all the members of the House of Assembly and the government and the people of the Virgin Islands.
So the opposition leader had another meeting?
Yeah, it was
You were aware of that?
a CPA event. Yes, I was aware.
Okay. So he didn't go to be a part of this conversation with the OT minister?
No.
All right. What did the trip cost the purse? And what was the real return on value? I mean, you've been traveling for a few years on climate change. There's nothing new with financial services. So with a hole in the treasury, why couldn't these meetings be held on Zoom?
You want us to meet with the new OT minister on Zoom?
Yeah, came and did.
So, I mean, I'm not quite sure how much you understand diplomacy and how it works, but so certain meetings are held face-to-face. You know, you see Secretary Blinken, you go into the United Kingdom to meet with Keir Starmer and David Lammy. You know, they go over to Ukraine to meet Zelensky. They don't have those meetings on Zoom.
Yeah, but with a hole in our purse, what was the value? I don't see the value. Most people don't see the value because you didn't really come back with anything on
I'm not sure
what we're on angst about.
I'm not sure if I'll be able to persuade you or some of the other persons you speak about the value of being able to engage with the United Kingdom government, who's our administering power and a major, I guess, influence on what happens here in the territory. Climate change as well. As much as we think that nothing is happening, we have to remain engaged on these particular matters because we remain vulnerable. And of course, I've seen a lot of progress since we've started our engagement in terms of the support for our cause. The BVI has just been elected vice chair of the CD, I think it's a CDC. CDCC.
Yeah.
And ECLAC is taking forward. The reason why we were elected vice chair is because ECLAC considered the fact that we were as associate members, that there needs to be a greater voice for the associate members as it pertains to matters of climate resilience. So we see progress, but progress sometimes works incrementally, and you have to continue to push forward and fight. And you can't abandon your engagement just because you haven't yet reached your destination. You might just be on the verge of a breakthrough. So you have to continue to fight and continue to engage.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in the ministries that report to you. Deaths for lack of basic medical service, pedophiles in public schools and not being sent home just to save face, and you being served court papers for lack of certain commitments. Who should be relieved of their duties? Who should be held accountable for the state of the territory and the absolute disrespect to the people's office?
Well, first of all, let me just say, I'm not quite sure some of what you're talking about.
I'm sure.
And you spoke about these ministries that report to me. I'm not quite sure what
all the ministries report to you, right?
Yeah,
at the end of the day, right?
Each ministry has a minister that's been appointed with responsibility.
But they all report to you?
Yeah, each ministry has ministers appointed to oversee issues in the territory. And in government, you'll have issues that spring up from time to time. But to suggest that somehow or the other, all of these things are somehow the fault of a one minister or one government, I don't think is a mature approach to take.
Well, I could only speak to what's happening under your government. I can't speak about another government or the government before. We just want to know what's happening with your government.
All governments in the past would be faced with challenges, and that's the nature of leadership. You know, we have challenges that spring up, and of course, it's our responsibility to respond to those challenges, and we do so as best we can. And the people of the territory will assess how well we do in responding to those challenges when the election comes.
Well, we're not heading to elections for another 2.5 years. So with what's falling apart under your government, do you have anything to say?
I'm not
Deaths for lack of medical service, pedophiles sitting at the school that can't be sent home, you being served by government, by courts for lack of commitments. Like, this is your government that we're talking about. So those questions are for you.
What you're saying is false, and I'd appreciate if you don't bring up any personal matters.
It's not personal. You sit as the premier of this territory, and everything that happens around you
I'm not having a debate.
The office.
I'm not having a debate with you
it's
here.
It's not personal.
Right? I'm not having a debate with you, and I'm not into a back and forth conversation with you.
So we just really wanted answers to the questions.
But I'll just say very firmly, I don't appreciate bringing up any personal matters here when I'm here in my capacity as the premier.
Okay. Governor Berry, you had more questions?
At which sitting will the no confidence motion be on the order paper?
That's a matter between the opposition and the Speaker of the House of Assembly and the clerk.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have ZBVI next. Very good to see you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Beverly Lewis, ZBVA. Minister Smith, I'll start with you. In terms of the financial services industry and your meetings in London, we know a couple of years ago you've had to set Margaret Hodge straight on what the BVI stands for and what the BVI does in terms of its industry. And her government is in, and she's also very influential and close to Prime Minister Keir Starmer. How confident are you in terms of what you guys put forward in London that, I mean, the attacks continue to come and the criticism, but how confident are you in terms of BVI systems, and especially with people like her around now?
Thanks for your question, Beverly. While we were in London, we did several things. One was to clarify what we do in the British Virgin Islands in terms of financial services. We met, for instance, to talk to them, to explain to them what the British Virgin Islands is about, how our financial services work, and so on. And of course, it would understand the importance of the media in clarifying and in terms of what is placed in the minds of persons about financial services. We have always been very proud of the financial services. that we offer in the British Virgin Islands. We have worked diligently with the Tory administration and officials and have reached agreement in terms of the matter that they are most interested in is one of public access to access to registers of beneficial ownership. That's PABOs. We have fully agreed on a process. We are fully engaged with them. Everything is moving forward at a satisfactory level. We spoke with the minister responsible, Minister Stephen Doughty, a Labour member of the Labour Party, about where we're at. He was satisfied. And we also met with other persons in the private sector, other persons from non-governmental organizations with whom, who are also friends with the likes of Dame Margaret Hodge. And we feel satisfied because of the level of transparency, because of what we do as a financial services jurisdiction, that there should not be any difficulty moving forward, even though, as you put it, it's Dame Hodge's party that is in power.
Okay. In terms of the basket of goods you spoke about when you had mentioned about the minimum wage, when you were having those discussions, how soon can you expect that to be in place, especially in light of school has just reopened and some parents are having a lot of hardships in terms of the supermarket prices, just as other people as well?
Yes, a very good question, and as you, as a journalist, would know, the COI has really kept us in the house late hours. In fact, the day before we left for London, we were there until nearly midnight. But I have arranged for meetings with the supermarkets to discuss this basket of goods. And I have every reason to believe that there will be cooperation on the part of the supermarkets, because those are the persons that we are dealing with first of all. And we should be meeting with them. In fact, now that I'm back, I will try to meet with them as early as possible this week to continue that discussion.
You've spoken a lot about cleaning up the territory, and we see, yes, the bush being cut right now. But in terms of the aesthetics, coming from the airport is just blah, just bush. Other areas, I mean, okay, is there any plans and probably a private-public partnership to maybe have nice billboards, maybe with Adija Hodge, Demoy Hodge, Karen McMaster, so at least when you're driving from the airport coming down, even on the bridge, that we have some sort of nice beautification? Are there any plans in place for that?
I can speak to that. Just as tourism minister, I asked my junior minister, Honorable Lusad Smith, in partnership with the Airport Authority, to lead an effort for some signage as it pertains to celebrating our sports athletes, our culture bearers, etc. But of course, as it pertains to beautification, it is something that is we've recognized that we need to improve on. That's why we have, of course, persons out there with the rated program. The goal is to make sure that persons are out, every day of the year, to be able to ensure that once we get the bush down, we keep it down. In addition to that, I made additional monies available in the last supplementary appropriation, so that persons can do things like contracting persons to be able to have bush cutting contracts and do other works, which would be considered recurrent works as opposed to capital works. But those are some of the things which are being done. But we recognize that we have some real challenges as it pertains to improving the look of the territory, and it's something that we're working on.
And Premier, as tourism minister as well, I don't know if you heard him, but the CEO of Win Air, he was saying that while we have plans to extend the runway, it is also important to develop hotel brands with them. The two of them go hand in hand. So you can just extend the runway and have no hotel brands to go along with it.
Yeah, that's why very shortly, we've been, the Prospect Reef Board has been making some major progress. And very soon you're going to see an expression of interest issued so that persons can express their interest in that particular property. We also in discussions with the owners of Beef Island who are interested in doing a major hotel development in Beef Island. Of course, we also have been in discussions with the owner of Norman Island who have had plans as well as a number of other investors. So we agree they work together, and very soon we should be seeing much more progress in those areas.
Beverly, I need to speak. I am going to have to speak on this subject of the BVI and the appearance of the BVI. I'm glad you asked the question. I drove in from Beef Island yesterday too. And as I drove from there to McNamara, there was no respite. There was no area that I could say looked fine. And yes, I know that God has given us a lot of rain in the last few weeks, but we can do better. And I'm glad you raised the question of a public-private partnership. I myself have gone out of my way not just gone out of my way, I've spent my own money to help to clean the country. We need to do a lot more in terms of helping each other. I love the idea of the public-private partnership. I have also, in fact, I'm working with another person I'm working with somebody in the private sector as a priority, work on areas for beautifying. So I would simply say to you, watch this space. Within the next few weeks, you are going to see some improvements. But as the Premier says, that rated program has to really start working. And beyond that, my view is that we need to go back to getting people responsible for specific areas of making sure that there are different, whether it's through contracts or what have you, that they are responsible for keeping certain areas clean.
I was told I have one more question. And I see the health minister here. Ron Potter said he's not going to resign as chairman of the BVI-HSA. Does the government plan to get involved? Because the only thing that can happen next is fire.
Well, let me just say that, and this is going to come up when we're in the House of Assembly now, dealing with statutory boards. Statutory boards are appointed by ministers, and based on the legislation, you can have other entities who have nominees. And of course, a member of a board who is appointed, their appointments can be revoked. And the revocation of appointments would be consistent with legislation as well as the protocol that we establish for the appointment and removal of board members. So, of course, we have great appreciation for all members who agree to serve on boards. But depending on the legislation, have passed under certain circumstances. And of course, the board that has come to our attention recently in terms of recent events is the Health Services Authority Board. I wouldn't want to preempt any decision that Cabinet may make, because of course Cabinet may have to consider that issue very, very shortly. So I can't preempt any decision that Cabinet might make. But just to give the public a bit more information, And I can say, actually, ironically, that same Health Services Authority board, when the member for the 8th District became the health minister, it was a gentleman by the name of Molito Smith, who was the chair of that board. And through the decision of the member for the 8th District, who at that time was health minister, Molito Smith was removed. I'm just saying that there's precedent in recent history for the removal of the chair of the Health Services Authority Board before their term comes to completion.
Just a follow-up. Some persons may see it as political interference.
Well, I would say since this government has been in office, we haven't functioned like that at all. We can look at several examples of persons who chair boards and members of boards who we very clearly know don't support the Virgin Islands Party or don't support us politically. We're interested in persons who are competent and who are effective serving on boards. And of course, that who would be willing to execute the vision of the minister and execute the vision of the government for which these statutory boards were formed. So I haven't seen any instance of anybody being victimized for their political affiliation or anything like that. And that's not something I certainly wouldn't tolerate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beverly. I think Mr. Connolly.
Good afternoon, Mr. Premier, Ms. Deputy Premier. If I could start with a slightly technical question, please. You got 47 of the 48 recommendations over the line on the extension to the extension. What's now actually left on your plate to complete, and what's left on the Governor's plate to complete, given his reserve powers and the need for royal assent?
Okay, thank you for that question. So the last remaining recommendation for the elected government to do its part has to do with statutory board reform. I believe this would be B26 in the report. So we have a first phase of statutory board reform, which would include 5 pieces of legislation: National Parks Trust Act, Board Act, H. Laverty Stout Community College Act, Ports Authority Act, and I may be missing one.
That's it.
Oh, that's 5. And those are before the House of Assembly now. Once we pass those, we would have, through agreement with the governor, that would satisfy that particular recommendation. But we will eventually make similar changes to all statutory board legislations. So once we finish this phase of the COI, we would move into kind of medium and long-term governance improvement, which would ensure that all statutory board legislations are fit for purpose, as well as other areas of good governance that we'll continue to strengthen, including education campaigns on the COI implementation we've done thus far, as well as things like Human Rights Commission that we want to be able to bring in short order, things like freedom of information, and things like that. But we want to make sure we mainstream this process of governance reform so it's integrated into everything that we do.
And the governor, does he still have stuff he needs to do?
He has to assent to legislation. And also we had additional reforms that we agreed to on our own outside of Sir Gary Hickenbottom's recommendations. That would include electoral reform. And that is, I believe, still with the Deputy Governor's office right now. And we're waiting for that to come to Cabinet so that we can take it to the House of Assembly.
Okay, as a follow-up to that, as part of this COI talks in London, you've mentioned a lot about climate change today. Where are we at with the climate change fund? Because like Christmas, it always seems to be coming, but unlike Christmas, it doesn't ever appear. How much is in there, and what projects are you, prioritizing, and when will we see the money?
Well, I agree with you. I haven't really been pleased with the rate of progress in that particular area. I've made it clear to the Ministry of Finance that whatever needs to be done should be done. So right now it's just a matter of agreeing the regulations. Those just have to come to the House of Assembly. So we're just waiting for them to reach to Cabinet. Once we agree them, then we would be able to operationalize the fund. It's probably somewhere around $13 million in there. And we have a climate change trust fund board in place. And they're ready, I believe, to be able to receive proposals for projects. And we have quite a number of projects, waiting for them to consider once the fund is operationalized. But certainly, I would like to see this happen, before the end of this month. I'm pushing for them to get the cabinet paper to cabinet before the end of this month.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My second question, Kathy.
Third.
No, that was the follow-up.
That is third.
No,
You're wasting your time.
I asked the question, then I asked the follow-up.
Is it not third? Let's go. Let's move forward, Mr. Connolly.
Funny way to run a railway, but anyway. Mr. Premier, last time I spoke to you here, you didn't want to discuss it, but the 13 million overspend on the public services payroll, who was responsible for that? Who's going to investigate it? And more importantly, can you guarantee that there will be no layoffs or pay cuts because of it?
Okay, well, thank you for asking that question. And yes, we won't have any layoffs as a result of it. We went to the House of Assembly a few weeks ago, and we were able at that time to ensure that we were able to meet our obligations until the end of the year. And of course, we anticipate we'll be able to meet our obligations in every budget to follow, 2025 and beyond. Obviously, of course, it's tight budgets that we'll have because of the probably close to $30 million increase in personal emoluments, of course, which is eaten up into some of our surpluses that we generally have. So we will need to speak about revenue-raising measures, especially revenue-raising measures that don't hurt, those most vulnerable in our society. And we have to speak about as a more efficient means of spending. So all of those things are things we can anticipate moving forward. The good thing is we have quite a number of things on the table which would help us to increase revenue and to spend better. Internal audit has started their investigation into the matter, and internal audit will be able to conclude who was responsible for what. So I don't want to preempt any report by internal audit. But certainly, and the Deputy Premier can bear this out, we are clear that there has to be accountability for the matter of the, I would say, miscalculation of the monies that needed to be appropriated at the beginning of the year. Obviously, we were told that it was somewhere around $10 million. Turned out to be much more than that. And that's something that we have to properly hold persons accountable for.
A follow-up question? Are you embarrassed by this?
Well, nobody will want to pass a budget without having the proper funds to be able to allocate to a particular area. The important thing is creation, and we make sure that we have the proper information as it pertains to what the salaries should be, and that we learn from the experience. That's the most important thing.
Okay, thank you. My third question, on the BVI EC, the the situation with the bills and everything and the bank accounts. Was that a data breach?
Yes, I think the BVI EC had confirmed that they had an attack. I think you would call it a ransomware. I believe it was a ransomware attack. They would have confirmed that. Yes.
How do you think they've handled it, though? Because I've been trying to contact them for some time to confirm it was a breach and the effect on customers. And this affects basically every household and company in the territory. And like before the last press conference, limited press conference, the day before, BVIEC sent out text to customers saying, oh, well, we don't think there's anything wrong, but you should check your credit cards because if there is, then you've got to change them. Do you think that was handled well by BVIEC, or like, did customers deserve more respect about their own bank accounts?
Okay, I can't really comment on that because I'm not fully apprised of the full response they would have given to customers, etc. But I can promise you that's something that I can look into.
And do you think they should change their style of dealing with their customers? Because it is a publicly owned company.
Well, I believe every agency should deliver the best possible customer service possible.
And they let themselves down on this, did they?
Well, I can't determine that just based on what you've said, but certainly we would want to ensure that the customers receive proper information as it pertains to, the monies that they have to expend for and the public services which are being provided to them.
It wasn't just what I said. It was a rather panicky scaremongering text that everybody on the island received. So that upset a lot of people. They were worried.
Certainly, I'm regretful that persons were upset by that. So perhaps maybe I can speak to the minister responsible. We could come to some conclusions about whether they didn't handle it in a particular way. That would be a conversation between the minister and the chair of the board as well as the managing director.
Finally, on the COI, when you were in London, you mentioned
Mr.
the fact
Connolly,
that an order in council,
Premier?
you failed to get that reversed.
Yeah, I'll take
so was that a failure on your part, or is that traditional arrogance from the Foreign Office?
Just before you answer, Premier, I see the other media houses giving me the stare. We want to be fair to everyone, and I was very, very clear when I started off. So Premier has the right to answer if he wants, but media, I respect you as you respect. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and answer, no problem. And if media houses want an extra question, I don't have a problem with that. But as it pertains to whether it's a failure, no, I don't consider it a failure on our part. I've made it very clear. I've made it very clear in the past, and I continue to make it clear that the order in council I see as a coercive colonial tool. And I think to say that, we failed in some ways, almost victim blaming. I believe that we need to move past those type of methods if we truly want to build a modern partnership. It's not keeping with the principles and the values espoused by the United Kingdom government. We recently signed a UK OT declaration, which speaks about values of respect for self-autonomy and democracy. I don't think that order in council is consistent with that, and I think it should be done away with. And I do think it would be a failure if it was not done away with as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Premier.
Yes.
That was a good answer.
Okay, 284.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jacques Wooding, 284 Media. Deputy Premier, I noticed you spoke very passionately about the need to not rush democracy. I'm wondering, looking back in regard to the COI, do you believe it was counterproductive in a sense to set a timeline on such an important democratic process?
We've been at this now for about 2 years, And there are so many things that happen, that happens. Putting a timeline probably was not the right thing to do. As I said, we might contemplate that it might take us a few days, maybe a day or two to finish a particular bill. It might take us weeks. You look, for example, I believe, Premier, it was the Crown Lands Bill.
Yeah.
We were at that for weeks.
Yeah.
And there was nothing that any of us, in fact, it was not desirable for us to finish the bill without going through it properly to make sure that given the whole geographic makeup of the BVI, from Anegada to Jos Van Dyke, that everybody, every island was treated fairly. So perhaps not. But what I like is that the end is in sight.
Yes.
We are nearly there. As the Premier said, we have one more set of, I have to call them a set of because it's 5 pieces. It's about statutory bodies, but it's 5 pieces. And after that, we are, I shouldn't say finished, because one of the things I also wanted to add in terms of next steps, I think the Premier spoke about next steps. Given that we have been at this for 2 years, who better to talk about governance, transparency, and so on than ourselves, the British Virgin Islands? JMC is coming up in the middle of November, and the Premier himself said to Minister Doughty that this is one of the areas that we would like to lead on, this whole area of governance, because we have a great story to tell. You know, we're nearly there in terms of the 49 recommendations, and we are undoubtedly best placed to talk about governance with our overseas territories colleagues.
Let me just add something to what the Deputy Premier said, which I completely agree with. Firstly, when we first set those deadlines were not set in consultation with permanent secretaries, with the Attorney General. It wasn't set, so the original deadlines were not realistic because it was really the same period of time for which the Ordering Council would have been in place. The UK government said they wanted to do an Ordering Council to have a governor-led administration for at least 2 years. So that same 2-year period was used. And it was anticipated that the governor-led administration would make all of these reforms in 2 years. Now, obviously, that administration may not have been as democratic as we were in ensuring that people's voices and the right consultation was had. And so we believe that doing it under a democratic framework was the superior way to do it. But as the Deputy Premier says, democracy can't be rushed. You have to go through the proper steps. And I believe we've done an admirable job of, while we had targets, and it's important to have targets because, of course, you have something that you can walk towards because you want to be efficient. But we did an admirable job of making sure that we didn't skip steps, that we did consultations with the public. If a bill was not of the best quality, we didn't just pass it. We ensured whether we had to send it back to the ministry to do more work on it, we did that. And if we had to spend a little bit more time in the House of Assembly making sure that we got bills right, we did that. So I believe that we've done a very good job of maintaining the balance between a democratic process and being very ambitious in terms of completing things efficiently. And I think that all parties should be commended for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, my second question, since you spoke a lot about climate change, we've had several instances this year with changing weather patterns where the BVI has seen significant flooding outside of the regular rainy season, especially earlier in the year. But the BVI receives late notice, of course, to no fault of the DDM because they're not a meteorological service. But the BVI relies on the Antigua and Barbuda Meteorological Service. When we see systems coming from the west, we do not receive those updates. Is there any update on the establishment of a local meteorological service or any plans to bolster relationships with other nearby territories whereby they can officially issue these types of updates for the BVI?
Well, I know it's something that the Minister of Communications and Works and his ministry had looked at. I'm not quite sure where they are in terms of their conclusions, but that is certainly something I'm sure he would be able to update on in due time. But I definitely know that's something he was looking into.
Okay. Additionally, on climate change, we see many times there are issues where members of the public are asked to respond with their pockets often to things they cannot control. Let's talk about rising temperatures.
Right.
People tend to not really have a choice but to use the air conditioning, get it installed, have their fans running constantly, and of course they have to pay for that electricity at the end of the month. Are there any plans to offer relief in that area, especially during the hotter months?
I'm glad you mentioned that. What I would like to see all of us do is make a personal commitment to our own climate mitigation matters. And the minister recently announced his STEP program, Solar Technology Energy Program, which I believe would go a very long way of ensuring that we are able to stabilize our electricity bills by minimizing the need to import fossil fuel. This program would work by each member of the public setting up solar panels on their own house roofs, and they would be able to pay back through their electricity bill. And I believe persons would see reduced electricity prices. I can't remember the amount of time they said that you would see reduced electricity prices. But I think, climate change is, as we said, is not anything that we can control, but we can control our response to it. And part of what we can do to help ourselves is to switch to alternative energy and to focus on our own actions that we can control.
Okay, just a follow-up on that question. I believe it was in 2022 where the government provided a subsidy on the fuel surcharge because at the time we were seeing extremely high costs on oil on the global market.
Yes.
Is that something the government would consider doing again?
Yeah, from time to time we do things like that. I think we've done it on a number of occasions. We did it in terms of imports. We offered, I think, a 5% flat tax on imports at one time. Sometimes we give incentives on, green technology, etc. We have import concessions on quite a number of items in the supermarkets, etc. So from time to time, we do give those type of concessions, and we can expect that to continue. I'm specifically on electricity. That's something that we consider, given if we have the resources to be able to do that.
Okay. And my final question, you spoke earlier about the procedure for the removal of board members. Mr. Porter mentioned in his release to the press that his resignation was requested via WhatsApp message. Does the legislation recognize this as an acceptable mode of communication, or was the minister's approach inappropriate given the gravity of the situation?
I didn't see the WhatsApp message or anything like that, so I won't comment on that particular. I won't comment on that particular approach that was taken. But what I will say is important for the minister and a chairman of any board to be able to have a means of communication where they can clearly express expectations, etc. And the method that is used to convey certain information, that's between the minister and the chair of the board. I have chairmen of my boards, and I communicate to them via WhatsApp, phone call, meetings, emails. So you have a variety of methods of communication. And of course, it would be for the minister to be able to manage what type of communication should be by what method. That's as we as ministers, something that we have to manage ourselves.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. To report. Yes, and BVI News. We do have a full house today, so.
Shanda Joseph, BVI News. First and foremost, I want to ask, since it's such a big issue right now, it's what funding do you plan to put towards emergency health care on Virgin Gorda as the Minister of Finance?
Well, I mean, we make a massive commitment to the health service. Yes, especially if you look at with the introduction of the new hospital, the amount of money that government has put towards health care, it takes up a sizable part of the budget. But certainly we are not satisfied that we have adequate services, especially in our sister islands, which obviously due to being outside of the biggest populated island has disadvantages. And I remain committed to ensuring that we're able to provide the level of financing for healthcare which is needed. But government subvention is just one aspect of it. Okay, there are other aspects of it, like for instance, the national health insurance, which has to be a part of a solution to better finance healthcare. We also have the Health Services Authority, who are able to do things like, for instance, at the hospital, rent facilities and space to persons who want to be able to offer services and facilities there as a means of being able to make additional income. And I believe there's a number of other things that we can do, but we have to put our heads together. But certainly it's overdue for us to have a conversation about what is the strategy for properly financing healthcare. It doesn't work just to come to the Minister of Finance and say, guess what, we need $40 million more. Because where's that money going to come from? It's something that's very easy to say. But if you want to be able to finance healthcare, you have to be creative, and you have to be use all available avenues to come up with what is sustainable financing for healthcare. And that's something that every country in the world struggles with. Let me tell you that. United Kingdom government struggles with it. Of course, you would know in the United States that has always been a big area of contention as it pertains to how can you sustainably finance healthcare. Some persons in the United States, they don't have access to insurance at all, especially before they had the Affordable Care Act. They would be dropping off persons at certain places because they didn't have insurance. So, healthcare financing is a big challenge the world over, and we're no different in that. But of course, we expect that those persons who are in positions of authority to help us to come up with some solutions.
All right.
I just wanted to add to that, Shanda. Sadly, I was traveling on the day of that meeting on Virgin Gorda. But from what I heard, it was a very passionate meeting. And the government has to commit, and the government is committed to doing whatever is necessary to help, to support Virgin Gorda. Virgin Gorda is an essential part of this community and of the territory, and the government is committed to doing whatever is necessary to help Virgin Gorda to remain a country that people feel safe, residents feel safe, as well as the very large visitor population feeling equally safe. So there is that commitment to supporting Virgin Gorda.
A follow-up to that question. A lot of people believe that funding had a huge impact on that situation. So in that aspect, if funding was an issue, do you think that Mr. Potter was the sole or may have had a larger responsibility in that, or is it a wider thing where more people should be taking responsibility for it?
That I won't comment on. Perhaps maybe in the minister's time he could, and those persons who are responsible for that particular area can speak to that specific incident, because of course that's the minister's responsibility. I certainly wouldn't want to preempt anything he had to say about it. And as the Deputy Premier said, neither of us were present for the meeting. So it would be necessary for us to allow the minister, who has been properly briefed by the Health Services Authority and his ministry, to be able to answer that question.
Okay, my next question. During your trip to the UK, do you think the governor was supportive and facilitating during this trip to help advance the BVI's agenda?
Well, we were in a meeting with the governor, and I don't want to give too much details of what happened in the meeting. But certainly, we spoke, the Deputy Premier and myself, we spoke in support of the Virgin Islands. You know, that's the role that we played in the meeting. But in the meeting itself that we were in, the governor didn't speak. He did not communicate. So we're not quite sure what the governor said to the minister or to the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office. So he would have to explain what he did in support of the Virgin Islands.
All right, so I have two more questions. Next question is there any update on the Ellis Thomas Downs negotiations?
No update right now.
Okay. And the last question is, do you think, or was the former Premier, Andrew Foy, mentioned at all on the UK, or have they moved on from that? Meaning, is there any residual challenges from the Foy saga in doing your job today?
Yeah, that was mentioned. At least 3 times in the meeting. That was mentioned, and I made it clear, the Deputy Premier made it extremely clear that that's a sad chapter in the history of the Virgin Islands, and of course what has happened in Miami, and it's time for us now to look forward and to move on.
Okay, no problem. That's all for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vivian. It's been a very long press conference, but in fairness to those people who asked before, and I said no, and Premier opened it up, and I'm trying to smile on camera, we're going to ask ZBVI, who from before, for that extra question, and so now we'll have to give her that one question, as well as JTV. And I am aware that House of Assembly is, yes, but the Premier opened it up, so I have to go ahead and do that. So
Okay, I'll be quick. It's just a follow-up and the question.
Understood.
A follow-up to Premier. When you spoke about Ron Potter and in terms of the resignation, basically what I get from you is that you guys are going to go in cabinet and decide to remove him. However, what we've been made to understand is that since July, there has not been a quorum in terms of board members for meetings of BVHSC.
Yeah, I mean, I can't preempt any decision that cabinet may make. But if a cabinet paper, as you've said, there's a need for a cabinet paper to come to appoint members of the board, and when that cabinet paper comes, we'll consider it and then make a decision.
There's a need, well, the public have been calling for, because last press conference, my colleague Zan, he took you to task about the public being left in the dark. Yeah. You see what happened in Virgin God over there and all the passion that Minister Smith spoke about?
Right.
The people of Tortola, other areas, they want town hall meetings. Your response to that?
Oh yeah, I'd be happy to have town hall meetings, and immediately following the COI process, I think would be a good time for that, because of course as the involved in the COI, it's taken us away from our constituents. It's taken us away from a lot of other priorities that we had, because it's a massive amount of work. And while of course we tried our best to focus on other matters outside of the COI, it's incredibly difficult. So I think moving forward now, there would be a real refocusing of our energy in trying to meet the needs of our populations. And of course, in order to do so, We have to meet with the people to find out what are the most pressing and urgent needs. Of course, we have our agendas. We have the things that we campaigned on, the things that we promised that we're working on. But certainly, I think it would be a good idea to hear from the people. I think that's a good suggestion.
Thank you very much, Beverly. And lastly, Kathy, your last promised question.
I might give my take back question that I had forgone.
There you go. Go ahead.
Earlier, I kept my questions to the trip, but I realized that it has been opened up. And the Premier, I'm asked if you can be as fair as you were in a matter comes up under either whoever is there, you allow them to come and give some clarity. We have, and I would be happy if you would allow him or compel him to have us to understand, because again, in the era of transparency and having people clear on what's happening, can the Minister for Health and Social Development, Mr. Honorable Vincent O. Wheatley, who is sitting right next to me, just let us understand the reason why Mr. Potter was asked to resign, and if we can have some information as well as to what's the status with that board, because we would have heard that that board is almost non-existent. Please, Premier.
Thank you for that 10-in-1 question. And the Minister is getting up.
I'll answer the last part of the question first. Kathy, if you recall, we used to appoint members to boards, to ministers. Since we've changed that policy where members have to apply, it has been a real challenge getting persons to apply for these boards. This board is one of them. We have to advertise time and time again saying, you have to apply to sit on this board. We have had challenges with it. Hopefully we've re-advertised some jobs. Up to 3 times we advertised for positions. I have to go to communities and say, people, please apply for these positions. I can't appoint you. There's a process. You apply, you go through a vetting, you go through a grading, and then you do a cabinet paper to get the positions into cabinet. It's one of the failures of this current new system, Premier, where persons have to apply. Persons are not doing it. And this particular board is one that has suffered from that greatly. I don't come prepared to speak about anything what HA said today. I'll have my own press conference later on where you can come and ask me all the questions you want concerning HSA. I'm not prepared today. Sorry about that.
And I believe that would be the last question. Thank you, Honorable Vincent Wheatley. Premier, I am going to give you the last say along with the Deputy Premier to close us off. It has been a very, very detailed press conference and many, many questions. I understand I'm very much aware of the impending House of Assembly, but we have 3 of the ministers here, so we definitely need to move on. I'll start with you, Deputy Premier, if you have any closing remarks, followed by the Premier, and we can close off very quickly.
Thank you very much, Director of Communications. I'm certainly very happy to have had this opportunity to talk with the media, talk with the people of the British Virgin Islands about our recent visit to the United Kingdom. As I said before, we did accomplish our objectives in full. It was a very fruitful visit to the United Kingdom. I want to emphasize one area, again, that of climate change. It is real. It is an existential threat to the British Virgin Islands. We have to take it seriously. And I was very encouraged by the kind of support that we received. I halfway teased the Premier today, and I said the fact that David Lammy is naming a czar for climate change in the United Kingdom. I said, Premier, you should take the credit for it, because we were the ones who emphasized the importance of it. But it was a very useful trip, and we look forward to the visit also, I should say, of Mr. Stephen Doughty when he comes. I believe it's the first week in November he will be coming before the Joint Ministerial Council. And I think he will be very pleased with what he will see.
And Premier?
Yes, let me say again that it was a very productive visit on behalf of the people of the Virgin Islands. It was a crucial trip for us to make to meet this new government to secure our interests as it pertains to climate change, as it pertains to the financial services industry, as it pertains to governance reform, and all the other interests that we have. I want to commend the Deputy Premier. I want to commend the Executive Director of International Business, Ms. Ayanna Glasgow, my Chief Advisor, Mr. Kedrick Malone, Tracy Bradshaw, also Susan Esto,
advisor.
Susan Esto,
Special advisor.
Lansom's a team supporting us, and the staff of the London office for their wonderful facilitation of the trip. I thought the team performed exceptionally well, and I believe that the people of the Virgin Islands are the beneficiaries of that hard work. And persons can be assured that we're going to continue to advocate for their best interests. These are very serious matters that require sustained and serious engagement. And that is certainly what we do on behalf of the people of the territory. Of course, persons would have been, as Kathy Richards said to us, persons would have been expecting to hear about this order in council. Rest assured that we're going to do everything possible within our power to ensure that order in council is lifted, including going to the House of Assembly and passing these 5 remaining pieces of legislation, and also, making a very firm case that we're serious about governance reform and not just about ticking boxes. That we've done a lot of work over the past 2 years, and I also want to show my gratitude to all the senior civil servants and their teams for the tremendous amount of work that has been done over the past 2 years. And that we have a good story to tell, like the Deputy Premier said. We're going to go to the Joint Ministerial Council. We're going to lead on that particular matter. We have a story to tell, because where we are today is a far better place than where we were 2 years ago.
Well, thank you so much, Honorable Premier and also Deputy Premier. I did say we had 3 members. We do have 4 members of the House of Assembly here. BVI, the world, we want to thank you so much for enduring the past 2 hours. I think this was a very informative session. I thank you for your patience. Media, I always thank you for coming and being on time. This could not be possible without you and your very poignant questions. We hope that most of your questions, if not all, were answered clearly and fairly. I see Kathy saying most. Again, we look forward to having these sessions as often as we can to give you, the public, information in real time. I want to also, again, recognize the Premier and Deputy Premier's support team here on my left, BVI, The World. My name is Karia Christopher. Thank you so much for listening to us on this Monday afternoon. God bless you all and have a wonderful rest of the week.